Hey nerds, and welcome to CW's Flash, Theories and Conspiracies. I'm Brian from Good Nerd Bad Nerd. This week on Flash, we didn't really have too much as far as Easter eggs go, but we did get a lot of setup and kind of teasing for what Barry is about to do and what essentially is going to lead into next week's crossover with Supergirl. But the things we did get are pretty neat. Real quick, Jessie leaves. At the very end of the episode, she just needs some space and time away from her dad to kind of get her head around everything that's happened and everything her dad has done. But it's important to note a couple things about Jessie this episode. One, she got injected by V9. Now, I've talked in the past about how Jessie actually becomes Jessie Quick, a speedster. So it's possible that she's going to just show up in a little bit and have access to the Speed Force. So a very interesting twist because didn't know if she was actually going to get Speed Force powers or if it was just going to be a nice nod to who she is in the comics. But I think going down the road, it's very possible for the writers to bring her back as a speedster and really kind of a teammate for Barry who can help out in the field, because that's one thing he has been missing in this entire 2 seasons of the show, is really someone who can help him in the field outside of from a tech and advice point of view. So Jessie Quick, we are probably going to be getting her sometime in the future. Now, the other thing is she leaves and she gets on a bus for Opal City. Opal City from the comics is the home of Starman. And if you are watching Supergirl, the character Adam Grant, or Adam Foster, this is Cat Grant's son, he is from Opal City. So there's it's another one of these locations in the DC universe that has a lot of history to it. So anytime you see somebody who's going somewhere and they actually name the place, I guarantee you it's someplace from the comic, and Opal City is it's one that's been used a lot. Now, the villain of the week, Eliza Harmon, or Trajectory. She, in the show, she's just a scientist with Mercury Labs and a friend of Caitlin, but in the comics, she is originally from Manchester, Alabama, and she actually was, they say chosen by Lex Luthor, but she really kind of just got up in Lex Luthor's face and just essentially demanded to be part of what's kind of known as the Everyman Project. And this was where Lex Luthor was trying to create his own superhero team, and she was begging for super speed. So Lex Luthor granted it, and she became a part of the team. Now, the problem was she couldn't slow down. She could not slow down to normal speed. She was always moving at super speed, and the only way she could do it was by taking a drug known as Sharp. Now, so they've got that kind of drug use element that we saw in the show. That is from the comic. It's just they switched it around, and the only way in the show she could get fast was by constantly taking V9, and in the comic the only way she could slow down was by taking Sharp. Well, she blames Lex Luthor for this and leaves the team for a while. Eventually she comes back though, but she's betrayed by Lex Luthor, and she is essentially depowered when she's in a fight with Blockbuster. So a tragic ending for her in the comics as well as in the show. But really the whole point of her here was to give that little piece of evidence that the blue lightning, when we saw her burn out, this is what we're seeing with Zoom, and this is how Barry and everyone else know and are able to figure out that Zoom is actually the guy who they thought was Jay Garrick. Now, we don't think he's Jay Garrick. We think that is actually Earth 2's Hunter Zolomon, and whoever is in the mask is actually Jay Garrick. I don't think it's going to be a case of another person that looks the same. I think we're going to get a completely different character. And it'll be very interesting to see what happens. I think the reason Zoom, or Hunter Zolomon from Earth 2, has been able to keep using the V9 and not completely die and essentially be absorbed by the Speed Force is because he is still taking the speed from Earth 2's Jay Garrick. He's supplementing, so he's keeping himself alive with the little bit that Jay Garrick has, but it's not enough to really save him, and that's why he needs Barry's Speed Force. So what do you guys think? Next week, Supergirl is on Monday, and that is where we're going to get the crossover, and we're going to learn that Barry he had to try coming back to Earth 2, and in his attempt ended up on the wrong Earth. Now, then the follow-up episode will deal with how he gets back and that whole journey, but make sure you watch Supergirl next week. I think it's going to be a really great episode. If you're not watching it already, it's totally going to be an episode worth checking into. It's a great series, and they do a great job of tying into the comics. So until next week, this has been Brian from Good Nerd, Bad Nerd, and this has been CW's Flash, Theories and Conspiracies.